Shark attacks are rare, but when they happen, they're absolutely terrifying. These aren't just accidents. They're moments of pure horror that unfold in the blink of an eye, leaving devastation in their wake. In this video, we're counting down the 5 most horrifying shark-related deaths ever recorded.
A horrific accident on a world-famous amusement park ride turned a fun family outing into a day of tragedy. Years later, the community hopes to finally have some closure.
It was March 27, 2021. 13-year-old Leonardo Luna Guerrero and his family had just recovered from the ravages of COVID-19. They traveled to Playa del Carmen, Mexico. They chose Zenses, a popular water park run by the well-known Grupo Xgaré, as the place to celebrate Holy Week. But within hours, everything changed. Leonardo was eager to enjoy the day. Alongside his parents and 3 siblings, he entered one of the park's most seemingly harmless attractions, the lazy river. Parents floated hand in hand with their kids, and the atmosphere was calm. But beneath the surface, something was terribly wrong. As Leonardo drifted along the stream, he was suddenly pulled underwater. It happened in an instant. His leg had become trapped, violently and invisibly, in an uncovered filtration duct beneath the water, a hazard that should never have been exposed. At first, his family thought it might be a prank. Maybe Leonardo was playing a trick. But when he didn't resurface, fear turned to terror. His father, Miguel Angel Luna Calvo, a cardiologist by profession, leapt into action. What he saw was every parent's nightmare. His son was stuck beneath the water, unmoving. Miguel fought desperately to free him. Other park visitors joined in the frantic effort, and after an agonizing struggle, Leonardo was pulled from the duct. But it was too late. He was unconscious, lifeless in his father's arms. On instinct and training, Miguel began CPR. The park staff rushed in, but Miguel quickly realized they were unprepared. He begged for a respirator. There was none. He asked for proper medical tools. There were none. Each passing second was precious. Minutes slipped by like water through fingers. Eventually, an ambulance arrived and rushed Leonardo to the nearby Amaramed Hospital. But on March 28th, hope shattered. Leonardo died from a pulmonary hemorrhage. The cause? Drowning. The kind of death no child should ever experience, and no parent should ever witness. The grief was unbearable, but the horror didn't end there. Miguel accused the park of negligence. He said the staff weren't just unprepared, they were evasive. They pressured him to sign a release form before returning his son's body, a move that felt more like a cover-up than compassion. Grupo Xgaré admitted that there had been human error. The filtration system had been undergoing maintenance and should have been sealed. But that explanation wasn't enough. Miguel's fury grew when he found out that the hospital refused to let him pay the bill. At first, it seemed like an act of grace. But then he realized it was something darker. By waiving the bill, he believed they were trying to silence him, to make the tragedy disappear quietly, to sweep Leonardo's death under the rug. In the years that followed, Miguel refused to stay silent. He spoke out, telling Leonardo's story over and over again, determined that no other family should suffer the way his had. He fought back against the narrative the park tried to spin. He accused both the park and the hospital of failing his son in every way, not just with faulty equipment, but with inaction, mismanagement, and an apparent attempt to shift blame. He tried to transfer Leonardo to a better-equipped hospital, but was allegedly blocked by hospital staff who seemed more concerned with bureaucracy than saving a child's life. By 2023, the legal battle was still ongoing, but for Miguel, this was never about money. It was about justice. It was about exposing a system that failed a boy who had already survived so much.
46-year-old Damian Johnson was out diving for scallops with his 20-year-old daughter when a great white shark, estimated to be 14 feet long, attacked and ate him alive.
On July 25, 2015, a serene Saturday morning draped the eastern coast of Tasmania in the soft glow of dawn. Damian Johnson, 46 years old, a seasoned diver from Kingston near Hobart, set out on what should have been another joyful chapter of his lifelong romance with the ocean. At his side was his daughter, Olivia, a young woman in her early 20s, who shared his deep love for the mysteries hidden beneath the waves. Together they were bound not just by blood, but by this passion for the sea. The evening before had been filled with excitement. Damian had sat with his family, spinning tales of the ocean's wonders, describing the beauty of the world that waited below the surface. Olivia listened closely, her eyes alight with anticipation. The sea had called to them both, and now they were answering. To those who knew him, Damian was more than just an experienced diver. His brother-in-law, Andrew Painter, remembered him as a careful man, someone who respected the ocean's power and never took reckless chances, especially not when his daughter was at his side. As dawn broke, father and daughter launched their boat, its hull slicing through the calm, silvered water as they made their way toward Lachlan Island and the shores of Maria Island. The salty breeze filled their lungs. The only sounds were the soft hum of the motor and their quiet, eager conversation. They reached their chosen spot, a place Damian knew well, where the sea whispered promises of hidden treasures. Without hesitation, they slipped beneath the surface, leaving the world above behind. Down in the crystal-clear depths, the silence of the ocean wrapped around them like a dream. Side by side, their movements graceful and in sync, they scoured the seabed for scallops, the simple rhythm of their task binding them even closer. The surface, the boat, the sky, they all seemed so far away as if the two of them were alone in another world. But the sea has its secrets, and that morning it chose to reveal one. It began with an eerie stillness, a sudden shift in the water that sent a ripple of unease through Olivia's heart. She turned, searching for Damian, but he was gone. The empty space where he had been moments before filled her with cold dread. Panic surged through her veins as she shot to the surface, her eyes wild, scanning the horizon, praying for any sign of him, but there was nothing. Just the endless stretch of water, calm and indifferent. Driven by fear, by love, by desperation, Olivia took a breath and dove back down, and there, in the deep blue, she saw it. A massive shark, its jaws stretched open in a nightmarish vision of power and hunger. Her father was caught in its grip, and the sea swallowed her scream as she witnessed the unthinkable. In that moment, the ocean that had always been their friend became a place of horror. Olivia burst to the surface again, her mind racing, her hands trembling as she fired the flare skyward. The bright red light cut through the dawn, a cry for help against the vastness of the sea. Nearby, fishermen and divers spotted the signal. Their hearts sank as they rushed toward her, knowing they might already be too late. Together, they worked in grim silence, hauling Damian's body up by his air hose, every movement heavy with sorrow. Back on shore, word spread. The community, so used to looking at the sea with love, now looked at it with grief. Damian's family, surrounded by friends, struggled to make sense of the loss.
A teenage boy has died after being bitten by a shark while surfing north of Coffs Harbour on the New South Wales mid-north coast.
The golden hues of early summer bathed Campbell's Beach near Coffs Harbour, New South Wales, in soft, shimmering light. It was November 30th, 2013, a day that seemed made for adventure. 19-year-old Zach Young, with his bright grin and boundless spirit, stood at the edge of the sea, his heart beating in rhythm with the waves. The ocean was home to Zach, a place where he felt alive, free, unstoppable. His friends, drawn to his energy like moths to flame, laughed and teased as they paddled out together, chasing the perfect wave under a sky that seemed to smile down on them. The sea welcomed them that morning, its surface glinting like glass, its waves rolling in with a promise of exhilaration. Zach led the way, bodyboard beneath him, eyes sparkling with the thrill of the ride. It was their sanctuary, the ocean, the sun, the salt on their skin. A place where worries vanished, where only the now existed. They felt untouchable, carried by the rhythm of the tide, lost in the sheer joy of the moment. But the sea, for all its beauty, holds secrets. And sometimes it reminds us just how small we are. Without warning, the mood shifted. Out of the depths, a shadow emerged, silent, ancient, lethal, a shark. A creature as old as the ocean itself, driven by instinct, by hunger, by the merciless laws of the deep. In a blink, the dream shattered. The water that moments ago had cradled them turned cold, foreign, dangerous. The shark struck with terrifying precision. One instant, Zach was chasing waves. The next, he was caught in the jaws of nature's raw, unrelenting force. The attack was brutal, savage. Blood clouded the water. His legs gone, his strength fading. The sea that had always been his refuge had turned against him. His friends, gripped by horror, were plunged into a waking nightmare. Time twisted, slowed, every second stretching into forever as they fought the impossible. With shaking hands, they dragged Zach's broken body to shore, their hearts pounding, minds screaming. Desperation fueled them. Hope clung to them like a thread about to snap. They pressed their hands to his chest, breathed life into his lungs, begged the universe for mercy. But the ocean had already claimed him. Zach's heart faltered, then fell silent. Cardiac arrest. Just like that, the boy who had lit up their lives was gone. The boy who had lived for the sea, who had found joy in every wave, was still. His friends knelt beside him, their hands stained with salt and blood, their faces etched with disbelief. The beach that had echoed with their laughter only moments before now stood silent, the waves breaking with cruel indifference. As they carried him away from the water, grief wrapped around them like a heavy shroud. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the sand. The ocean kept moving, endless and uncaring. But for those who loved Zach, it would never be the same. That stretch of shore would always be the place where part of them was lost, where the fragility of life was laid bare, where the sea took someone who should have had so many more days, so many more waves to ride.
Imagine riding the perfect wave, feeling unstoppable, when out of nowhere, terror strikes. Former bodyboarding champion Mathieu Schiller faced this nightmare in the waters of Reunion Island. In a shocking shark attack that left the world stunned, this surf legend's final moments remain a haunting mystery.
It was supposed to be just another day under the sun on Reunion Island. For Mathieu Schiller, a 32-year-old local legend in the surfing world, it was a place he called home. A former French bodyboarding champion crowned in 1993 and European team event winner in 1995, Schiller wasn't just a talented athlete, he was a lifeguard, a certified coach, and the founder of Baccanello Surf School, a surf school that had introduced countless young islanders to the joy of riding waves. His passion even extended into surfwear, launching a brand called Local Brothers, which proudly sponsored local surfers. But on September 19, 2011, that same ocean he loved so deeply turned into a scene of pure horror. The warning signs were unmistakable. Rough seas pounded the coastline, and lifeguards had hoisted red flags along the beach of Baccanello, signaling treacherous waters and advising swimmers and surfers to stay ashore. But as is often the case in tight-knit surf communities, experienced surfers like Schiller weren't so easily deterred. The waves were rolling in strong, and over a dozen surfers had paddled out to catch them, unaware that something deadly was already lurking beneath. Around noon, the calm broke. Schiller had just dived beneath a wave when, according to multiple witnesses, the water erupted in a sudden and violent frenzy. A large shark struck first, clamping down hard on his legs. Schiller fought back with everything he had, using his boogie board to strike at the predator. But then came a second shark, this one tearing into his torso. Moments later, a third shark was seen thrashing nearby, its jaws snapping through the blood-churned water. Panic gripped the lineup. Surfers screamed and scrambled, but some rushed toward the attack. Yves Delaplane managed to reach Schiller, desperately holding his wounded friend on a surfboard. Vincent Rzepecki, a lifeguard, paddled out through the chaos to help. The two tried to pull Schiller to safety, but just as they made progress, a powerful wave smashed down on them, knocking Rzepecki off balance. He held on to Schiller for as long as he could, refusing to let go, but another wave crashed through, tearing the now limp body from his grasp. By the time rescue teams arrived, the scene had become a nightmare. The waters were teeming with sharks, drawn into a frenzy by the blood. Firefighters attempted to retrieve what they could, but it was hopeless. The ocean was no longer just wild, it was carnivorous. They were forced to abandon the effort. Schiller's body was never recovered. Survivors later described the moment in chilling detail. One surfer recalled seeing Schiller raise his arm and scream, followed by a sudden cloud of red blooming beneath the surface. Another said the shark that attacked him circled first, sizing him up with eerie calm before striking with unimaginable speed. The impact on the community was profound. Schiller's death was the fourth shark attack on Reunion Island that year, and it became a turning point. Surfing licenses on the island dropped from 1,600 in 2011 to just 400 by 2015. Fear gripped the once thriving surf culture. Parents pulled their children from lessons. Tourists stopped venturing into the water, and a fierce debate ignited over shark management, marine protection, and the dangers of surfing in a region increasingly known as a global hotspot for shark attacks. To this day, no one truly knows how many sharks were involved in the attack. Some believe they were tiger sharks, others say bull sharks. What's certain is that the ocean that day became a slaughterhouse, and a man who had dedicated his life to its beauty was devoured by its darkest side. Mathieu Schiller's legacy lives on not just in the surf school he founded or the brand he built, but in the hearts of every surfer who now hesitates before paddling out on Reunion Island.
As Davi was on the way to the toilet, he passed the entrance of the volcano slide. Although the area was partially closed off, Davi got through at the entrance, which was only covered by a piece of tape.
It was supposed to be just another warm Sunday filled with laughter, splashes, and sun. On February 13th, 2022, 8-year-old Davi Lucas de Miranda was exactly where he loved to be most, at Droma Aqua Park in Caxias do Sul, Brazil. For Davi, the park was magical. He had visited many times before, always begging to return, his eyes lighting up at the sight of his favorite attraction, the towering volcano water slide. But this time would be different. This time, joy would turn to horror. That afternoon, Davi's father, Luano, had taken him and his younger brother out for a quick trip, just a few hours to burn off some energy. It was supposed to be simple. It was supposed to be safe. But inside the park, something had changed. The volcano slide, once a symbol of fun, had been partially dismantled. 3 of the 4 slides emerging from the volcano's peak had gaping holes where the plastic tubing had been removed for maintenance. The attraction should have been completely off limits, and at first, it was. Tall fencing had been put up to prevent access, but that protection didn't last. Somewhere along the line, someone made a decision. The manager, Cristiano Villares, reportedly ordered the fencing removed. In its place, a thin strip of caution tape and a vague sense of "do not enter." From a distance, the volcano still looked open. It still looked fun. Especially to a child who had climbed those steps before. Especially to a little boy who didn't know he was walking straight into a death trap. Davi had wandered off after going to the restroom, just a moment out of sight. That's all it took. No alarms, no lifeguard to stop him, no signs shouting "danger." Just a familiar staircase and a trusted playground. He began to climb. From the top, everything looked normal. The tube stretched ahead, curving downward into darkness. It was the same slide he remembered, or so he thought. Davi sat down, pushed forward, and let gravity take him. But the slide was broken, not ahead of him, not behind, underneath. Halfway down, the sealed safety of the tube simply vanished. A gaping hole waited where part of the slide had been removed. There was no warning, no net, no guardrail, and Davi fell. He dropped nearly 50 feet, slamming into the hard metal and wooden scaffolding that supported the ride's skeleton. His body ricocheted and tumbled, landing in a shallow pool, just 28 inches deep. Rescue workers reached him quickly. For a fleeting moment, there was hope, but hope wasn't enough. Davi succumbed to his injuries at the hospital. And just like that, the vibrant boy with the curious eyes and endless questions was gone. His mother, Jacqueline Rosa, shattered by grief, spoke through tears. He was a marvelous child, so full of plans, so full of life. He just wanted to play, and that's what cuts deepest. Davi didn't die because of recklessness on his part. He didn't die taking some dare or leaping a fence. He died because people failed to do their jobs, because shortcuts were taken, because someone decided it was okay to remove a barrier meant to keep children out of danger. The investigation laid the facts bare. The original fencing could have saved his life. It was strong, effective, and visible. But once removed, only tape remained, insufficient and utterly useless. The ride was left exposed. The hazard wasn't hidden, it was wide open. The park operated as if nothing was wrong, as if a missing chunk of water slide wouldn't matter, as if a child's life could be trusted to warning tape. The civil engineer tasked with overseeing the maintenance, Flavio Tomás de Aquino Mus, failed to ensure the site was properly secured during park hours, and in the end, it cost a family their child. Davi's death wasn't a tragic accident. It was preventable. It was the result of apathy disguised as protocol. It was a moment of innocence swallowed by the consequences of carelessness. And now, every parent who watches their child climb the steps of a water slide, every family who places trust in amusement parks to keep them safe, must ask, is it really safe? Because no family should have to go through what Davies did, and no child should ever have to die just because they thought the slide was still open.
Twisted and broke apart about 10 feet from the top. 33 students couldn't hang on.
On June 2nd, 1997, Quimby Gillotti, just 18 years old, was days away from her high school graduation. Quimby had spent years preparing for her future. That morning began with excitement and hope. Quimby and her classmates from Napa High School boarded buses with the kind of joy only seniors on the verge of graduation know. The destination, Waterworld, USA, a thrilling water park in Concord, California, known for its steep slides and pulse-pounding rides. For the class of '97, it was their last big celebration before stepping into adulthood. No more homework, no more hall passes, just one perfect day to remember forever. Waterworld had become a tradition for Napa seniors. Every year, students packed into the rides. It was dangerous. They knew that. But it was also tradition. And this year, the plan was even bolder than usual. Rumors swirled all day. More than 70 students wanted in on it. Their target, the Banzai Pipeline, one of the tallest, fastest slides in the park. Wide open and steep, it was a slide meant for solo riders. But that didn't matter to them. Not when adrenaline and memories were on the line. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the park's closing announcements crackled through the speakers. It was time to head back to the buses. But Quimby didn't go. Neither did dozens of others. With one final surge of excitement, they rushed toward the Banzai Pipeline. Quimby was right there with them, swept up in the energy of the moment. She had worked so hard, played by the rules, and now she would let loose. At the top of the slide, a lifeguard stood, whistle in hand, trying to stop them. But the students were determined. They pushed past her, yelling and cheering as they packed onto the fiberglass slide, bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder. 33 teenagers, all on one slide, and then it happened. The structure groaned. A sickening crack echoed through the air. The fiberglass couldn't take the weight. It began to bend, then buckle, and in an instant it gave way. Screams filled the sky as the slide snapped, dropping the riders 40 feet in free fall. Some slammed into wooden beams on the way down. Others hit concrete, bushes, shallow water, or each other. Park-goers watched in frozen horror. A moment that had started with teenage rebellion turned into a nightmare playing out in real time. Dozens were injured, and in the middle of it all, motionless, was Quimby. She had struck a support beam on her way down, suffering catastrophic trauma to her head and chest. EMTs did everything they could, but within 45 minutes she was gone. The girl who was supposed to walk across a graduation stage, to take on the world with her brilliant mind and kind heart, never got the chance. In the days that followed, the city of Napa was plunged into mourning. Napa High's graduation, held just 10 days later, was not a celebration. It was a funeral in disguise. Some students showed up in wheelchairs. First responders sat beside them, and the seat where Quimby should have been had remained heartbreakingly empty. Her father, Larry Gillotti, filed a wrongful death lawsuit, seeking justice for the daughter he lost. It wasn't about money, It never is. It was about the gaping hole left in his life, the unanswered questions, the park's failures, the adult supervisors who didn't intervene, the safety protocols ignored. In the end, his family settled for $1.7 million, the largest payout from the disaster, but no settlement could bring Quimby back.
Two teenagers spearfishing in Australia are attacked by a massive great white shark after killing one of the boys.
In the quiet, untamed stretch of Chains Beach along Western Australia's rugged southern coastline, the early morning sun bathed the water in gold, casting a warm, deceptive calm over the sea. 17-year-old Jay Muskat was alive with excitement. The ocean was in his blood, its mysteries a part of him. He called himself just a young, salty dog on Instagram, but to those who knew him, Jay was much more than that. He was the kind of person whose love for the sea was infectious, whose joy made others believe in the magic of the ocean. At his side was his close friend, Matt Peller, another soul drawn to the deep, sharing Jay's passion for spearfishing, for discovery, for the wild and beautiful world below the waves. That morning, Jay and Matt prepared with care, as they always did. Their gear was checked, then checked again. They knew the sea could be unpredictable, but nothing, not experience, not caution, not love, could prepare them for what was coming. As they slipped into the clear, cold water, the worries of the world melted away. They were weightless, free. The seabed below was a dreamscape of color and movement, a place where time seemed to stop, where two friends could lose themselves in the rhythm of the hunt, the pulse of the sea. For a time it was perfect. Their laughter rose in bubbles to the surface, their easy banter carried by the currents. But then, in a heartbeat, everything changed. From the depths came a shadow, massive, silent, unstoppable. A great white shark, 4, maybe 5 meters long, emerged from the blue like something from a nightmare. Its black, unfeeling eyes locked onto Jay. There was no warning, no chance. The shark surged forward, and in a single brutal instant, its jaws clamped down, and Jay was gone. Matt saw it happen, saw his friend ripped from the world in the space of a breath, and then the shark turned on him. The ocean was no longer a playground. It was a battleground. Matt's heart pounded. His instincts took over. As the shark bore down on him, he raised his spear gun, aimed, fired. The spear found its mark. The shark, stunned and bleeding, twisted and vanished into the deep. The silence that followed was deafening. Matt, trembling, his mind reeling, swam to Jay's side, but the sea had taken too much. The vibrant boy who'd laughed with him moments ago was still now, the water around them stained with loss. Matt didn't stop. Somehow, through the shock and horror, he managed to fire a flare. Its red light tore across the sky, a desperate cry for help. Fishermen nearby saw it, their hearts sinking as they raced to the scene. Together, they brought Jay back to shore, but it was too late. The sea had claimed him. News of the attack swept through the beach community like a cold wind. Friends and family stood in stunned silence, staring out at the waves that had always seemed so beautiful, so full of promise. Now those same waves whispered a darker truth. The sea gives, but it can just as easily take.
Surfer and actor is dead after an apparent shark attack on Sunday. Tamayo Perry was surfing off of Goat Island in Hawaii.
The waves off Oahu's north shore were quiet that Sunday afternoon, deceptively so. The ocean shimmered like glass under the Hawaiian sun. And for a man like Tamayo Perry, it was just another day in paradise. Surfboard under arm, he paddled out near Goat Island, a place he knew better than most. He'd danced with waves here for decades. It was his home, his church, his battlefield. But no one, especially not someone as seasoned and deeply respected as Tamayo, could have imagined what was waiting just beneath the surface. Tamayo wasn't just any surfer. He was a local legend, a lifeguard, a teacher, a man who surfed with soul. He had tackled some of the world's deadliest waves, stood shoulder to shoulder with the best, and even found his way onto the silver screen, appearing in Pirates of the Caribbean, Blue Crush, Lost, and Hawaii 5-0. But his real story wasn't Hollywood. It was here, in these waters where he lived, worked, and inspired everyone who crossed his path. That day, June 23, 2024, the unimaginable happened. Tamayo was suddenly and violently attacked while riding waves he'd likely ridden 1,000 times before. A shark lunged, ripping through the ocean with terrifying force. Witnesses would later describe a gruesome scene. Tamayo had lost an arm and a leg, Lifeguards raced across the water on jet skis, desperate to pull him to safety. They brought him ashore, working against time, but the injuries were too severe. The man who had dedicated his life to saving others could not be saved. He was just 49. News spread quickly. Hawaii was shaken. The surfing world heartbroken. Tamayo wasn't just admired, he was loved. His smile, his spirit, his passion for the sea had left an imprint on everyone he met. Fellow lifeguards, friends, and locals who had grown up watching him master the waves gathered in disbelief. Acting Ocean Safety Chief Kurt Lager called him a lifeguard loved by all. Mayor Rick Blangiardi, visibly moved, called it a tragic loss, mourning the death of a legendary waterman. In the days that followed, the ocean seemed quieter, more solemn, as if it too mourned the passing of one of its own. Tamayo once wrote that he was just a small-time island boy who could bang it out with the world's best. And he did. He didn't just conquer waves, he conquered fear, inspired passion, and lived with a joy that was as big as the Pacific itself. But in a cruel twist of fate, the very sea that gave him life took it away.
Kyra had been in the lake at the water park at a birthday party, swimming in what was a designated area. The only warning signs were to alert people to shallow water, nothing to indicate the depths Kyra was swimming in.
It was the kind of summer afternoon every child dreams of. Sunlight dancing on the water, laughter echoing across the park, and the thrill of birthday cake and inflatable obstacle courses. 11-year-old Kira Hill, a bright, athletic girl from South London, was there to celebrate a friend's birthday. She was full of joy, surrounded by 10 other children, each ready to make the most of the day at Liquid Leisure, a popular water park near Windsor in Berkshire. No one imagined it would be the last afternoon of Kira's life. At first, everything was perfect. The air was warm, the water inviting, and Kira was eager to leap into the fun. But somewhere in the middle of all the splashing and shrieking, something went wrong, terribly wrong. She had entered the water, not on the inflatables, but in a designated swimming area where life jackets weren't required. It should have been safe. And yet, she didn't come back up. Nobody saw it right away. Not the other children, not the staff, not the lifeguards whose eyes were meant to be trained on every ripple, every shadow beneath the surface. Minutes slipped by, precious minutes, the kind you can't ever get back. Then someone noticed. Panic gripped the park. Voices rose. People began shouting her name. Lifeguards scrambled, unsure of what to do. Witnesses later recalled the chaos, the desperation, the terrifying sense that no one was truly in control. Lifeguards were asking guests for goggles. Staff searched the wrong areas. There was no clear direction, no swift emergency protocol. Just confusion, just delay. Kira was still in the water. More than 40 people, a mix of staff and terrified guests, jumped in to help. But the search was frantic and uncoordinated. Too slow, too late. With every passing second, hope slipped further away. Emergency services weren't even contacted until 3:55 p.m. By the time Kira was finally pulled from the water, it was after 5:10 p.m., more than an hour since she had gone missing. She was rushed to Wexham Park Hospital, but there was nothing they could do. She was pronounced dead, drowned. Her father, Leonard Hill, was left to face the unthinkable. A parent's worst nightmare made real by a series of human failures. This was neglect, he said. A lack of awareness, not paying attention. Almost a carefree attitude shown towards her. I would say she was left to drown. His voice cracked not just with grief, but with disbelief. Anger. The conviction that this didn't have to happen. Kira had been in a shallow area. She hadn't strayed. She hadn't broken rules. She had done what any child might do. And still, somehow, she slipped through the cracks of the water, of the system, of the people who were supposed to be watching her. She had a chance, Leonard insisted. But lack of urgency, lack of interest, lack of action is the reason why my daughter is no longer here today. No parent should have to speak those words. Liquid Leisure was fined £80,000 for failing to ensure the safety of a guest, an additional £30,000 in costs, a £2,000 victim surcharge. The company issued a statement of sorrow, claiming heartbreak and cooperation with the investigation. But for Leonard, and anyone who loved Kira, no amount of money could come close to justice. No fine could rewind time. No statement could erase the image of those wasted minutes, that frantic search, that agonizing wait for someone to do something. Anything. Kira Hill was just days away from turning 12. She had dreams, a future, a family that adored her. That birthday never came. Instead, she became a story that no one wanted to tell, a warning, a tragedy, a name that should have been protected, not mourned. And we are left to ask ourselves, what if someone had paid closer attention? What if a whistle had blown sooner? What if one person had noticed, had moved, had acted just in time? Kira was not just a child at play. She was a life, full of promise, stolen in silence, right beneath the surface.
A man who was reported missing is believed to have died in a shark attack off South Australia's Eyre Peninsula. The 46-year-old school teacher, identified as Simon Baccanello, went for a morning surf but never returned.
It was just after 10 a.m. on May 13th, 2023. The morning sun bathed Walker Rock Beach on South Australia's Eyre Peninsula in a warm, golden glow. The sea glistened under a cloudless sky. Among the dozen or so surfers who answered that call was 46-year-old Simon Baccanello, a man beloved in the small town of Elliston. A teacher, a mentor, a friend. Simon had only been in Elliston since January, but in those few months, he had woven himself into the fabric of the community, teaching math, science, and physical education at the local school, inspiring students with his passion and kindness. That morning, like so many before, Simon went in search of the joy and peace that only the ocean could give. The water felt alive, pulsing with energy. Simon paddled out, joining the others. There was laughter, the kind of camaraderie born of shared respect for the sea. But beneath the surface, unseen, something ancient stirred. It happened in a heartbeat, a shadow rising from the deep. A great white shark, massive, unstoppable, driven by instinct older than time. Before anyone could react, the predator struck. The water exploded into chaos. The shark thrashed violently, the sea stained red. Simon's surfboard, once his shield against the waves, now stood upright. Tombstoning, they call it. A grim sign that its rider was being dragged down. Simon fought with everything he had, desperate to break free, desperate to breathe. But the shark came again, and again. 3 times it attacked, each strike more brutal than the last. The other surfers could only watch in horror, powerless against the nightmare unfolding just meters away. Jaden Miller, one of them, saw it all. The violence, the struggle, the awful finality of it. His voice cracked as he shouted for help, though he knew deep down that help might already be too late. And even in his final moments, Simon's instinct was to protect. He'd shouted a warning to nearby swimmers, including a 13-year-old boy, urging them to get to safety. His last act, selflessness. The sirens came quickly. Helicopters sliced through the sky. Boats skimmed the waves. Emergency crews, police, volunteers, all drawn together by the same terrible purpose. They searched with grim determination, combing the shoreline, scanning the water. Pieces of wetsuit, fragments of white polystyrene, a surfboard bearing a massive bite through its center. These were the only signs of what had happened. No second chance. In the days that followed, the town of Elliston, a town of fewer than 400 souls, fell under a shadow of grief. Flowers appeared along the sand, quiet tributes from broken hearts. The school where Simon taught struggled to comprehend the loss. His students, his colleagues, his friends, all of them grappling with the cruel reality that a man who gave so much could be taken so suddenly. They remembered his easy smile, his boundless energy, the way he inspired, encouraged, lifted those around him. He wasn't just a teacher, he was part of them. And now, gone. The search stretched on. Hope flickered, then dimmed. Authorities knew that whatever the sea hadn't hidden might wash ashore. In time, they said, the search would end, and the focus would turn to the inquest. But no one wanted to let go. Not yet. Not of Simon. And as the community mourned, the ocean kept its secrets. The waves rolled on, indifferent. The same sea that had given so many moments of joy had turned in an instant into something merciless. Those who knew Simon would never look at it the same way again. Where others saw beauty, they would remember the cost, and in their hearts, Simon would always be there, etched in the salt and the spray. A man who lived fully, gave freely, and was lost too soon to the vast, untamed deep.
But before its big debut, major questions about the ride's safety. Early tests showing sandbag dummies going airborne.
On August 7th, 2016, at Schlitterbahn Water Park in Kansas City, the Schwab family arrived with excitement. It was Elected Officials Day, a special occasion offering free admission to public officials and their families. Among the crowd was Kansas State Representative Scott Schwab, his wife Michelle, and their 4 sons, including 10-year-old Caleb. Caleb was all energy. He couldn't wait to conquer the park's most infamous attraction, Verrückt, the world's tallest water slide, standing 168 feet high. It was taller than Niagara Falls, steeper than it looked, but behind the screams of joy and marketing hype hid a secret no one dared to question, until it was too late. There were no age restrictions, no professional oversight, just a towering monster of a ride built not by engineers, but by daredevils who played with physics like it was a game. Caleb, weighing just 73 pounds, lined up with his older brother Nathan to take the plunge. Nathan went first. Caleb followed, joining 2 adult women on a 3-person raft, seated right in the front. He was beaming. He never came out alive. As the raft hurtled down the slide, it hit the first slope with terrifying speed, but the second hill, designed like a roller coaster loop, proved fatal. The raft went airborne. In an instant, Caleb was thrown from his seat and slammed into a metal pole supporting the overhead netting. Below, families screamed. Park goers turned away. Nathan, just 12, stood at the bottom waiting. He saw the raft come down. He saw the body. He knew. His scream tore through the air. Michelle, frantic, tried to run to her son, but bystanders held her back. They were trying to protect her. But from what? A sight no mother should ever have to witness, the unthinkable truth. Scott, in shock, kept repeating the same desperate question. Is he really gone? Yes, he was. The days that followed unraveled like a slow-motion nightmare. The investigation into Caleb's death revealed a horrifying truth. This wasn't an unpredictable freak accident. Verrückt had a dark history, one that had been ignored. The ride had been tested using sandbags, and even in those early trials, the rafts had flown off the track. Videos existed showing the danger. The warnings were there, but they were buried, overlooked, dismissed. There were no certified engineers involved in designing the slide. Other guests came forward with horror stories, and yet it remained open. In the months that followed, the Schwab family filed suit. In 2017, they reached a $20 million settlement with Schlitterbahn and the ride's designers, but no dollar amount could undo what was done. Caleb's death sparked criminal charges. Jeff Henry, the park's co-owner and the man who envisioned Verrückt, was charged with second-degree murder. Prosecutors argued it was more than negligence. It was recklessness. But even those charges were dropped. Questions about the evidence allowed the accused to walk free. No one was held accountable. The slide was torn down. The park was shut for good in 2018, but the damage was eternal.
A 13-year-old surfing champion died in a shark attack off the coast of the Indian Ocean island of Reunion.
Reunion Island, once a tropical dream for surfers worldwide, has become a place of heartbreak, a paradise shadowed by something lurking just beneath the surface. In April 2015, that darkness struck again. This time, it wasn't a seasoned professional. It was a child, a boy with dreams as wide as the ocean. His name was Elio Canestri. He was 13 years old. Elio wasn't just another kid playing in the surf. He was one of Reunion's rising stars. Brave, talented, and already a local champion. He lived and breathed the ocean. And like so many children growing up on an island ringed by waves, the sea was part of who he was. but it was also where he would meet a fate too cruel for anyone, let alone someone so young. That morning, Elio left a note for his mother. Just a few words, scrawled with the casual confidence of a teenager who believed he had it all figured out. "Don't worry, Mom, I'm going surfing. If there's no security, I won't surf." He promised he'd be careful, promised he wouldn't take risks. He even said he wouldn't go in unless there were trained spotters scanning the waters for sharks. His parents trusted him. After all, Elio had always been cautious. He listened. He understood danger. He was a competitor, yes, but also intelligent and thoughtful. But passion has a way of clouding judgment, and sometimes fate has other plans. Elio went out with 6 other surfers that Sunday. Despite an official ban on water activities without safety patrols in place, a ban born out of a string of horrific shark attacks in recent years, they paddled out anyway. The water was perfect. The waves were rolling, and no one could have imagined what would happen next. Without warning, the water erupted. A 2.5-meter bull shark surged upward, dragging Elio from his board and into the deep. The others could only watch in horror as their friend, the boy with the big smile and bigger dreams, was pulled under. The attack was fast, brutal, final. There was no time to react, no second chance. By the time help arrived, it was too late. Elio was gone. The island mourned. This wasn't just another tragedy. It was the 7th fatal shark attack in just 4 years. 9 others had survived close calls near the same beaches, St. Leu, La Pointe aux Celles, places that used to symbolize freedom and joy, now marked by blood and fear. His father, Giovanni, spoke through tears. He was always very careful. He listened to his parents. He analyzed danger intelligently. But Titi, his nickname for Elio, was devoured by his passion. Fate decided one day to take him away, and he is gone. The president of the French Surfing Federation, Jean-Luc Arassis, tried to make sense of it all. How could anyone forbid a 13-year-old boy from chasing his passion? When you grow up on an island surrounded by the sea with waves calling your name, how can you turn away? From sudden ambushes in crystal-clear tropical waters to brutal encounters shockingly close to shore, these attacks ended in ways so gruesome and unforgettable that they still haunt the world to this day.
Friends stared out to sea in disbelief on Thursday after the death of 20-year-old David Lilienfeld near Cool Bay on the False Bay.
It was supposed to be a perfect day, a day of sun, surf, and salt-kissed air, the kind of day David Lilienfeld lived for. At just 20 years old, David was no stranger to the ocean. A champion bodyboarder, he had grown up riding the waves of South Africa's rugged coastline, fearless and free. On that fateful afternoon at Coil Bay, east of Cape Town, David and his brother Gustav paddled out together, brothers bonded by their love of the sea. The water was calm, the sky clear, and nothing hinted at the horror that was about to erupt beneath the surface. Then it happened, in a flash too fast to process. A dark, monstrous shape loomed from the depths. A great white shark, massive and ancient, at least 16 feet long, broke from the shadows of the sea. There was no warning, no time to react. The shark lunged with primal force, its jaws clamping onto David and dragging him under the water in a swirl of froth and blood. Witnesses on the beach watched, frozen in terror, unable to help as the ocean seemed to swallow him whole. Gustav, just meters away, saw everything. The fear, the chaos, the desperate struggle. He paddled with all his strength, fighting the waves and his own panic, determined to reach his brother. When he finally did, he found David grievously wounded. The shark had torn away his right leg completely, severed clean below the hip. The sea that had given them so much had, in an instant, taken nearly everything. Together with friends and horrified bystanders, Gustav hauled David onto the jagged rocks, shouting for help, hoping against hope that there was still time. But the damage was too great. Before medics could arrive, David slipped away, leaving his brother and father devastated on the shore. His right leg was never recovered, lost to the deep. As the tragedy sank in, anger and grief rippled through the community. The peaceful waters of Coil Bay had been disturbed in the days before by a controversial shark documentary being filmed nearby. The crew, eager for dramatic footage, had used chum and bait to lure great whites close to shore. Too close. Experts had warned that this could provoke danger, that bringing predators into human waters was a gamble with lives. One shark author, Dirk Schmidt, had pleaded for the project to be stopped, terrified that it would lead to disaster. And now, here it was, his nightmare realized in the most brutal, heartbreaking way. In the aftermath, confusion reigned. Permits were revoked, the documentary was scrapped, and officials scrambled to distance themselves from the tragedy. Some claimed the filming had nothing to do with the attack. Others weren't so sure. National Geographic denied involvement, but the damage was done. A young man, beloved by his family and admired by his peers, was gone. His final moments played out in the most terrifying way imaginable. In front of his brother, in front of the world. And as always, the ocean returned to calm, the waves washing over the blood-stained rocks, as if trying to erase what had happened. But for those who were there that day, for Gustav, for David's family, for the witnesses on the beach, the memory would remain forever. A chilling reminder that beneath the beauty of the sea lies a world of untamed, unforgiving power.